Are you new to stick welding and are you having trouble welding 7018 uphill? If so, you're in the right place. I'm excited you're here. I have a simple trick that I hope helps you when welding uphill with 7018. Today we're going to be hanging a couple of pre-made gates, and I'm also going to be discussing a couple of differences between pre-made gates or store-bought gates versus a custom-built gate. And have you ever wondered how long it takes to burn one 332 7018 welding rod? And another question I get quite often about hanging gates is, how do I keep my hinges centered between the rails on my gate? How do I keep that gate from falling down to the next rail? Now remember, you got your gin pole on. Don't be driving underneath no low crossings, Austin. Keep it in mind. Be mindful. Be mindful of the gin pole. I may have taken out a couple of things with my gin pole in the past, I'm just saying. And it's been on my 95 here lately, so I'm just reminding myself to be mindful. All right, so today we're hanging what I refer to as a pre-made gate, and all I mean by that is somebody mass produces these things, and so they're usually a standard like size and type. These raw gates, at least in Oklahoma around here, are usually a little bit heavier than like well, kind of like this gate right here. This is also a pre-made gate, but it's like a preferred or something. Most generally these raw gates are going to be a little bit heavier than those, but they're still not as heavy as like a custom gate that I've built for a couple entryways. And obviously you get what you get. What I mean by that is the thickness of your pipe that your gate's built out of, how many rails are in the gate. Now there's tons of different pre-made gates, if you will, and they do come in different gauges of material, you know, 22 gauge, 16 gauge, 18 gauge, 20 gauge. They got all different sizes and weights of pre-made gates. Some are painted, some are raw, like what we're working with. But my point is a pre-made gate is, you get what you get, versus a custom built. Just like anything custom, you can customize it to match your fence. You can customize the weight, the wall thickness of your pipe. You can just be more creative with it. But there's also the option of using these more affordable pre-made gates, but building your fence to match the gates. Just something to keep in mind when designing your fence. As you can see here, they're still pretty thin. I'd say that's probably 14 gauge. This is an inch, and I think they said, did you say inch and 7/8 or something? This is actually slightly bigger than ones that I've hung before, because ones that I've hung before are inch and 5/8 OD, but I mean, you get the idea. They're just most generally a six run, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And depending on how long it is, will depend on how many uprights it's got in it. But yeah, just basic hinges built in, piece of pipe go over with a piece of plate coming out. Other gates that I've got before are usually a little bit, they've got like a 1/2 or 3/8 plate, versus this looks like it's about 1/4 inch plate. So yeah, and the latching is upside down, but the latch apparatus is just a chain and fall right in there. This one's a little bit less heavy duty, I feel like, than ones I've got in the past, but they're the place where I normally get them. They were out, so I had to go elsewhere, but it was also, it kind of reflected in the price, you know. It wasn't as expensive as the other ones. So I'm kind of looking at this, and this says this might be inch and 7/8, but this here is a little bit smaller. This, I bet, is inch and 5/8, but just the upright here is inch and 7/8. And this is inch and 5/8, same as that. So just the two ends are inch and 7/8. Everything else is inch and 5/8. Tubing versus pipe. Right here, I'm just burning off some old tar on this old oil-filled pipe. This is one of the downfalls of using old oil-filled pipe, is having to deal with stuff like this, tar. Some old oil-filled pipe has concrete lined in it, plastic lined in it. There's all kinds of different different things, but the positive to some of this old oil filled pipe is sometimes it's pretty thick, so even if there is a little bit of surface rust or pitting, you still got more wall thickness there, to that way your posts last that much longer. So it's not always a bad thing to use old oil filled pipe, but it is something to be aware of when buying it. Is you're going to have to deal with stuff like I'm dealing with here, which is burning off the tar so I can weld my hinges on. All right, here we go, uphill. Oh, hold up a minute. Scratch my slag off of here. The only welding rod that I welded with today on these gate hinges is 332/70/18. That's what we're welding with here. I put one pass uphill, just kind of stepping it uphill. Sometimes I even do like a mini zigzag. Speaking of order of passes or procedure, if you will, a common practice when welding anything, but for example on these gates, I always try to put a pass on one side and then a pass on the other side. So hypothetically, or like I'm doing in this video, I'm putting 2 passes per side of my hinge. So one thing that I try not to do is weld my short pass and then right after weld my cap pass. If I do that, chances are it's going to pull that hinge over and it could mess up the way our gate's hanging. So what I try to do is to put my first pass over here, and then I'll jump to this side of my hinge and put my first pass here, and then go ahead and cap it, and then go to the other side and cap it. Cool, man. Now I just got to weld the other side of the hinges one more time. Here's the next victim right here. What do we have here? Little Shetland pony. What do you say, little guy? Where are you going? See you later. A little rascal. All right, so this gate is going, there he is, look at him. Look at that little turd loafing around in the shade like a loaf of bread. All right, anyway, here's the next gate. This hole is custom. This is a 12-foot gate, and this gate is obviously a little bit long for our hole, but we're just going to put it on the outside here. That way, whenever they open it, it can just fold right up against this and be out of the way and everything. I mean, gates are nice, being able to swing both ways, but I personally like when they only open one way, only because of the fact that they can slap up against the fence, because it's just cleaner whenever it is open, you know. And as far as like moving cattle and stuff, like whenever you're trying to get them into gates, it's nice for that gate to be back around here versus, you know, if this gate was hanging right in here, it would only be able to open up to right here. And so if you were trying to get cattle in there, which chances are you're not going to try to do that. But anyway, my point is they could get right in here in this corner. Gates here, fences here, they come right here instead of around the gate. So it's just an example of one of the reasons why I like hanging gates on one side or the other. But like I've mentioned in the past, if you've been following along, you know that it's all situation dependent, and it really depends on how often your gate is open or how often it is shut. Because if it's shut most of the time, like say this gate is shut most of the time, like 90% of the time, but I'm just driving through it a lot, then it can be hung in the middle because we don't really care to leave it open for any reason, because we're just going to open it to drive through it, then we're going to shut it back. But if it's, you know, if you want kind of more like universal corrals or pens or whatever you're using your gate for, you may want to have this open a lot of the time. You know, if you've got something in here that you want them to have access to this barn, but also out here, you want to be able to tie that gate back here while you're using it, you know, while you don't need that gate to be shut. But maybe you go to work cattle one day and you need to shut this gate to be able to move something around in here or hold something in here. You want to be able to shut it. So that's what I mean by situation dependent. But okie dokie pokey. Let's get a little old tack on here. How does that sound? How does that sound, my friend? All right, go ahead and put us one pass on here on both hinges, and then we can give it a test swing. Let the gate jacks off and give it a test swing. I'm just stepping it up, and then where this pipe's rusted out a little bit or pitted, I am just kind of pausing for a little bit longer to let that puddle kind of fill it in, you know, like on my down step, you know, step up and down, and that, because I'm stepping up and then I'm coming back down, up and down. Whenever I come back down, I stay there a little bit longer, and that puddle will kind of come up and fill in the longer I pause. But you don't want to pause too long, obviously, or else it'll fall out. But and making sure you're going in all at the same time with the stick rod, that's a good practice, is to continually feed it. That makes a big difference, keeping your arc length, which is the distance between your welding rod and your base metal, keeping that arc length the same all the way throughout your whole weld. All right, now let's see how long it takes us to burn one 332 7018 welding rod uphill. All right, that was real time. I didn't edit anything out. And did you catch how long it took? Did you time it by chance? Because I did not. I did not put a stopwatch on it, but I did get a rough time whenever I was editing this video, and it was roughly 30 seconds. I can't remember if it was under or over, but roughly 30 seconds to burn this 332 7018 welding rod uphill. But keep in mind that there's a lot of different variables that goes into how long it takes to burn a welding rod. This is just how long it took me with my welding machine, where my welding machine was set, how fast I was moving my welding rod, like how fast I was pushing it in, but also how fast I was moving it, also known as travel speed. So you got your feed, and then you also got your travel, which is like downhill to uphill, that's your travel speed. So to make it way less confusing, all these variables go into play, and if you're just starting out, keep all this in mind and know that essentially, maybe not by the book or scientifically, but basically you can get the same result by turning your machine down and moving slower as you can by turning your machine up and moving faster. But if you're just starting out, I encourage you to turn your machine down. That way you can give your eyes, your hands, your mind time enough to study your puddle and see what's going on. Because if you're new to welding, you may be trying to control that puddle, but not aware of the fact that maybe you're too hot. So by being too hot, you're probably doing the right things, maybe. I can't know for sure, but you might be doing the right things, but you're just having to do it too fast because you're too hot. So just turn it down and slow down a little bit and give your, like I said, your mind, your eyes, your hands, give yourself time enough to focus on what you're doing to get that same result. All right, time for the old test swing. Come on. Hello. My favorite part. The old test swing. Swing, bada 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 bada, swing. Let this guy down. And then let this guy down. Before we test swing it, I want to come in here close and show you what keeps the gate from falling. They tack a piece of pipe on here, and you just make sure you run your hinge up to that piece of pipe, and that pipe, since it's welded to the gate, it just sets on this hinge, and that's what keeps the gate from falling to one of your rails. Now let's give her the old test swing. All right, works pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for coming along with me today. If you're interested in digital prints of the gate jacks that you've seen us use in today's video, that way you can build your very own set of gate jacks to hang gates a little easier. You can find them on my website, arosswelding.com, as well as several other helpful resources, arosswelding.com/shop. Hope you have an awesome weekend, and remember, learn something every day.